simple, straight up and safe method for changing the strings on your electric guitar. That's coming right up on Wolf's Articulatory guitar. Although I do have a pretty fancy collection of tools, here's the minimum set of tools that you'll need to get the job done right. I've got a clip-on tuner, a wrench, a string winder, a neck stand, and side clippers. And of course, because it's a string change, you're going to need replacement strings. What I've chosen here are some of my favorites, D'Addario NYXL 10-46s. Pretty much most strings are good. Trust the recommendation from your local store. You also really don't want to take a string in the eyeball, so glasses are a necessity to keep it safe. These glasses I need to see things that are far away, and these progressives are what I'll use for the string change. So, placing my trusty guitar in the operating theater, we'll get started on this process. And you'll see I've got a towel laid down to protect the table and also to protect the guitar. You don't want scratches. You could get a professional technician's bench kit. Probably order it from your local store. And you'll see that I'm supporting the neck just behind the first fret with a neck stand. This is also a supply you can get at your local store. Mine's from D'Addario. Okay, so first step in any string change is to get rid of these old strings. These strings have been on there for about a year and they are done. This is the step where I like to bring the string winder in. I don't tend to wind my strings up with it, but it's a great shortcut for winding the strings down. We're going to take all the strings off at once. Your neck can handle that. It's got a truss rod reinforcement. It can definitely handle the drop in tension. It's designed for it. Your guitar is actually probably incredibly strong. So we take the tension way down on each of these strings. And I'm going to cut around that because you don't need to see the whole process. Throughout this part, you do want to be careful because the ends of these strings, especially the thinner ones, are very pointy. They can poke you in the finger. Alright, now that I've got the tension dropped on all the strings, I will unwind them from the posts. This is another step where you want to be careful. You don't want to poke yourself. Also, you don't want to scratch the finish anywhere on the guitar with those pointy string ends. So at this point, I've got all 6 strings taken off the tuning heads, and they've got these curly ends on them. These curly ends, if you drag them through the body of your guitar, could cause some damage to the finish, so we want to be careful with those. We're going to clip them off. That's where the side nippers come in handy. Now, of course, this means we're not going to be able to reuse these strings, but we're taking them off because they're dead, so there's no reason to try to reuse them. You can repurpose them for art projects, as I've seen some clients do, but apart from that, these are just dead strings. Those curly ends that you just cut off, you want to be careful with. They can poke you. You want to be careful how you dispose of them as well, because they could poke the person that tries to clean up after you. Then, we got to get those strings off the guitar. I have seen people try to remove the entire bridge assembly to get these off. What they didn't realize is the way the guitar is built on the back. It's got holes in it. And those ferrules are what the strings pass through. They lock in through what we call ball ends, although those balls are actually kind of shaped like metal loops. So, you'll see that if I push a string through from the top of the guitar, it's going to pop out the back just like that. We're going to do that with all 6. So I've got all 6 ends. If I pull them straight out, the sharp ends on the other side, I'm not going to scratch your finish. You do want to be extra careful. By the way, if your guitar was made in a country that has a climate that is more humid than your country where you're living right now, watch those ferrules. It's possible they'll pop out due to wood shrinkage. Here I am on the other side of the camera. Those strings we just took off, we're going to wrap around themselves for easy disposal. Notice those out of focus, beautiful ball ends, they call them, that are actually little metal loops. You can sometimes recognize the brand by the fact that they're multicolored. Before we put on new strings, there's a couple of steps I like to go through here. I wouldn't consider it a tool, but there's another piece of equipment that you could use. A cloth of some sort. Make sure it's soft. Microfiber is advisable. And wipe off any dust or junk that's on your guitar. The other thing that I like to do at this point is, since I've got all the strings off the headstock, check the tightness on all of the retaining nuts that hold those tuners in place. You do not want to over torque them. Just make sure they're nice and snug. If they're not, they can move around when you're trying to tune or play the guitar, and that'll mess up your tuning. Alright, so at this point we're ready to take out our fresh strings and start stringing up this guitar. I always go from the thickest string to the thinnest string. That is your low E to your high E. They're recognizable from their thickness, but also some companies will color code the loop ends on your strings or the ball ends on your strings. Sometimes you get nice extras in the package too, like these stickers. I have entirely too many of those stickers. You want to be careful when you take these out of the package. They could unwind and smack you in the eye. I'm wearing glasses, so I'm safe from that kind of effect. You might want to consider wearing safety glasses yourself. If you think you look silly wearing safety glasses stringing up a guitar, imagine how much sillier you'll look with an eye patch explaining to people that you could have prevented that eye injury if you just worn glasses while you were restringing your guitar. Okay, so according to the color code here, my thick E string is a brass loop. Gently pick up the guitar, insert the string through the back side, through the correct ferrule, and it's through. At this point, you want to be nice and careful. Switch over to the front side of the guitar, pull it through, making sure that that sharp end is not going to scratch the finish of the guitar or poke anybody in the face. Once you have that string through, check that it's nice and snug and that the end is locked inside the ferrule. Bring it up over the neck. Try to keep it flat. You'll see I'm using my thumb to push the string down. Lay it into the nut slot. Now on a guitar headstock that does not pitch back like this one, you're going to need a little bit of extra slack. So we're going to wind this string around bottom to top the tuner post once, twice, a third time. Let's take some strength on your fingernail. Keeping some tension, we will poke the string through the hole in the tuning post above the windings that you just made. Pull that tight. Then do not apply any sideways pressure to the nut when you are tightening the string around the tuning post. If you do, you could break that nut. Nuts are replaceable parts of guitars, thank goodness. They're not that expensive as parts, but they take some skill to fit to the guitar. Your factory nut should be the best possible fit to your guitar. If you have to get that nut replaced and think you can do it yourself, I hope you are an experienced guitar technician or luthier. Otherwise, please take it to your local shop before you mess with it. They will do it right. Now we've got this excess string here. You notice I wrapped around 2 or 3 times. In the case of a non-tilting headstock, 3 times. That provides a good break angle on the nut so that you won't go out of tune and you won't pop out of the nut. You notice I took the string up to some tension, but I'm not worrying about the tuning yet. I've got this excess. I want to clip that now. There's no sense having it sticking off the end of your headstock. It provides no contribution to the sound of your playing. You could curl it around if you like, but it does nothing at all for you except make you look kind of lazy or make you look like you didn't take the effort to go get some clippers. Leave about 1 centimeter. You can leave less if you like, but not too much less. And that pokey thing is going to have to get disposed of safely. You're going to repeat the process for all the rest of the 6 strings. I just wanted to mention something, and that is the gauge of your string. Now, gauge is another word for thickness. It refers to obviously how thick your strings are. Thickness of strings partly has to do with your preference on how the guitar feels when you play it. It certainly includes ease or difficulty of bending your strings or performing vibrato. It has some sonic consequences as well. Mostly, it's a matter of comfort. But when you're choosing your string gauge, you want to make sure that your guitar is prepared for that or set up for it. Your guitar features, most likely, a reinforcement rod called a truss rod that runs the length of the neck. The function of that truss rod is to keep the neck as straight as possible. It, to some extent, will fight the tension of the strings because the strings do apply quite a bit of tension. They're going to try to bend the neck forward. Your truss rod makes the effort of keeping that neck straight. If the truss rod was expecting a certain quantity of tension, and by changing the gauge of strings you change that tension, you may end up with some setup issues. Your strings may be too far up off the fretboard, or they may be so flat down against the fretboard that it creates more fret report or buzz than you like. These issues can be solved by performing a setup, which can be done by you, or more advisably, done by your local technician. Alright, we'll skip ahead here to the thin E string and we'll just confirm that method. I've brought it through the back of the guitar as this guitar design demands. I note that the end is secure in the ferrule. Bring it over the bridge, securely over the saddle. Bring that string straight across the neck, over the nut, down into the nut slot. In this case, underneath the string retainer or string tree. Wrap it around my tuner, and in this case, because the tuners are aligned on the left side of the headstock, the string comes around from the right and wraps around counterclockwise. I will wrap the string around that post 3 times, and then above my windings, poke the end of the string through. You want to be careful not to get the end of that string underneath your thumbnail. I've done it a few times. It's not pleasant. Bring that string up to a little bit of tension, and I will clip off the excess. Dispose of that safely. Alright, great. All 6 strings are on. Looks like I have some tuning to do. We'll use my favorite clip-on tuner. This is the Boss TU10. Pretty much any clip-on tuner will do. Some are more accurate than others. So let's see what kind of note I have on my thick E. It's detecting that it's a super low F sharp, so I'm going to have to bring that up. You know the rest of the process, and I will do a special supplement on this. You notice I'm pulling up on the string to stretch it a little bit. Always pulling straight up. I do not want to stretch the string sideways. If I do, I might break the nut. You can apply a little bit of tension behind the nut as well. After you notice that your string is sticking in the nut, there's a couple of things that you can try. My favorite one is graphite lubrication. And that means shaving some graphite pencil directly into the slot or getting professional graphite paste. Another thing that you can do is smooth out that nut slot with a conical section diamond file. I've done that too. You want to be careful messing with your nut though, because if you destroy it, it's going to have to be replaced. And that takes quite some technical skill. We follow the same process through the rest of the 6 strings, E, A, D, G, B, E, and then we're going to have a guitar that's in tune. Another tiny bit of advice, tune up to pitch. Don't try tuning down to pitch, you want to tune up to pitch. That's going to keep your strings in tune. It will prevent them from going out of tune when you do bends and vibrato. And that's your basic string change. Thanks for joining me on Wolf's Articulatory Guitar. See you next time.